Hi, I'm Peggy Farron. Thanks for joining us on the Understand Photography show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Today we're going to talk about product photography with Luke Ayers. Now in this interview, you'll hear a lot about shooting in the manual mode, white balance, things like that. If you'd like to have a really solid foundation in photography, please sign up for our online class. It's called the 4 Weeks to Proficiency in Photography. And we'll be having you shoot in manual in the very first class. It's a foundational class. You will feel so empowered by the time you finish this class because you're going to have the concepts of photography really down. Plus, this course is going to teach you the concepts of photography, but how to actually apply them on your particular camera. So if you have a Sony, a Nikon, Canon, we cover everything. It's an interactive class, so you have access to me to ask questions. You have support, you have homework. It's a really, really great class. Go to understandphotography.com and click on tours and classes to find it. And hey, you guys who have been following us for a long time, we really, really appreciate it. It's been really a big joy, but it's time to end. It's been more than 4 years that I've been putting out the Understand Photography show. And I love it. I really do. I love meeting the people. I love learning, but I don't make any money. I just don't make enough money at it to continue on. Each episode takes 10 to 15 hours to put together, and I'm on my own now from COVID. So I really need to concentrate on what makes me money. So I hope you enjoy our last show. I found Luke Ayers on YouTube. I wanted to do a show on product photography, and I watched many videos, and I just really liked Luke's teaching style. It was very similar to mine and to Joe Fitzpatrick's teaching style, where he simplifies the technical, which I like. So welcome, Luke.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad I found you.
Yes. You sent me a random message and I'm just like, oh, who's this Peggy? And you're doing all these. I think it's great that you want to help people understand photography, because that's exactly what I've been trying to do for a few years now. And I made a course and blah, blah, blah. I think, sorry, if I may go on an initial rant, it's just like, I think a lot of things, even not just in photography, but I don't think it's taught simply enough. And I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, I want to take a great photo, and then they buy this $5,000 camera, and there's like 20 million buttons on it, and all the settings and the menu, and it's just like, it's overwhelming, and then they might just give it up. But it's actually like there is a way you can make it simple, and I've seen some of your stuff, and I really appreciate that you're one of these people who are trying to really help people understand it and do it simply and sort of down to earth and not like so professorial and all this kind of stuff. So thank you.
Well, thank you. But now that you had your rant, tell our audience who you are or a little bit about you. I already told them who you are.
Oh, okay, lovely. So my name's Luke Ayers. I'm born and bred Australian, but I'm currently living in the UK. I've been doing photography. I also do video, but mainly photography, professionally for about 9 years. I just turned 30 this year. I did it, I've been doing it since I was about 21 professionally, and I'm self-taught basically. And I went through all the mistakes and everything like that. And I started out primarily with product photography. That's how I learnt. These days I do many other things which I've branched off into. But product photography is where it began. So, and I believe that's what this conversation is about. So, and I enjoy teaching people. So anything you have to ask me, I'm just going to be your book, and you can just tell me what you'd like to know.
All right. So we're going to go right into product photography. So if I'm new, let's say I'm new to everything. I'm new to photography, but I think I know what I'm doing, and I want to get into product photography. And let's think of a product. What's a product? Is there a typical product?
A shoe, a cup, a toy.
All right, let's do a shoe. Okay.
Yes.
I have two godsons, and they're both into selling shoes online.
Yes,
They
lovely.
buy them for a discount, and then they sell them to this company online. So let's talk about shoes.
Lovely. Good.
So what's the first thing that we have to think about? So we got this shoe. Let's say it's a sneaker and it's white.
Yep. Good. Great. So basically, well, if anyone hasn't looked up this word before, the word photography means light writing. Photo means light. Graph means to write. You put it together. Photography is the action of writing with light. And before you think about things like, oh, what equipment do I need? I need blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, fundamentally, it's about light. So when I first started product photography, I looked at all these images in magazines and on the web and on the internet and stuff like that. And it's just like, why does that look so good? And why is it when I pick up my phone and take a photo of a shoe, it don't look like that? This sort of a thing. And really, like, the art of photography is understanding light and how you can control light. And basically, what makes you a professional is not the price tag of your equipment. It's how well you understand how to control light and make it do what you want, because a camera is just recording the light. If there was no light, it doesn't matter how expensive your camera was, because it would just be seeing black. It would just be seeing, it wouldn't be recording anything. So it's how it's how well you can light that shoe, and a few other little details like positioning and blah, 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 these things, which we'll get into. But fundamentally, you need to understand light. And so if we took a white shoe, okay, so first of all, you look at what, you have an idea of what the end result is that you want. So what is it you're shooting it for? Is it like Amazon or eBay where they have the pure white backgrounds? Or is it like, you know, they have magazines and they have these, what is it? These environments. They have a beautiful lounge room and the shoes in the center of the couch and blah, blah, blah. And maybe there's a model or something. It depends. You've firstly got to have the idea of, okay, good. What is it I'm going for? So what is it? Are we doing like a pure white background sort of eBay, Amazon type thing?
Yeah, let's do that, because that's hard, right? That's harder than an environmental shot, isn't it?
It can be harder. It can be a lot easier. But yes, it's like, okay, good. So especially nowadays, if someone usually sold stuff in a store, and now it's a bit more restricted trying to sell things in real, you know, in person, you might want to have an online store, something like this. So good. So a white background, and yeah, that would be fine for, you know, if you're putting on Amazon, eBay, or your own online store. Okay, good. So we want to take a white background shot of a white shoe. Now, can we just change the color of the shoe for a second? Because white on white.
All right.
Whatever.
Let's make a brown brown now.
Yes, it's a brown shoe. Okay.
All right, brown shoe.
Good. Good. So if you want like a simple DIY way of doing it, do it yourself. Basically, first of all, you want to get a background that is white. So you should go to a hardware store, a place where you can get literally a big sheet of white material. You can use a piece of paper if you're photographing something very small, but a shoe's quite large, so it would probably be too big for a piece of paper. But you get a big whiteboard and you set that up on a desk or something, and you deliberately get it long. So literally you would lay it on your desk, you would then curve it up the walls, so you get this curved background. Now that curve is what gives the illusion that your object is in, you know, a space that goes off to infinity. You know how it seems to go off forever. Like there's no exact wall you see behind it. It's because the platform it's on is curving up and away, and it creates that illusion. So that's the first. You want a background, okay? So you got your white background. Good. Put your shoe on the white background. Now, there's things like the positioning of the shoe. It's entirely what you decide you want to do. Like with angles, it's like, okay, good. So you go onto any website that sells shoes, and usually they will have it from different angles, things like this. So a classic angle that you would shoot anything from, say you were just taking one shot, it would not necessarily be having the shoe like straight on, you know, towards you. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't even necessarily have it maybe straight on the side. You would probably have that as maybe a secondary shot that you have. But probably the best angle where you see the most, you you want to show the thing with product photography is you want to show as much of the product as you possibly can in a single image. So the best angle in general is what's called a 3/4 angle, where it's literally diagonal.
Okay.
It's pointing 45 degrees. And that can be to the left or the right, whatever sort of shows the shoot best. Good. So you have it on your white background, you have it on your 45-degree angle. Good. Now, basically, then you'd have your tripod, you put your camera on it, and then you just kind of, okay, good. Generally, you would have your camera slightly higher and looking down. Good. Now that's basically everything else handled right there. It's extremely simple, except for the light, which is now the most important part.
I was going to say that's
exactly. We haven't had any light. Okay, and now this is the most important thing.
Okay, now
so the light.
You did give me a point that you missed.
Tell me. Oh, what did I forget? Yes.
Ensure that the product is ridiculously clean.
Oh, which yeah, I did mention that.
Never have thought that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have remembered that later on when I finally looked in the computer. But let's yeah, good. So you have a product. Now, yeah, if you look at your shoe and you look at your shoe in real life, you might look at, oh yeah, it looks fine. But believe me, once you've taken a photo and you've got that in the computer and you're looking at that, you will see that no, there's a little hair there, there's a scuff mark on it, there's a faint blemish on the thing. You have to be ridiculously anal about it and make sure that is completely clean. Like, if you want to be lazy about it, it just means you're going to have to do more work and learn Photoshop later to correct these things. But really, to save yourself the effort, you just make sure you got like if you have 100 products, you make sure you got the product which is undamaged, it is in perfect condition, there's no nicks, there's no blah, you clean it, you wipe it off, you make sure it's perfect. Good.
Okay. And
you place it on your background, set up your camera. Boom.
All right, what about gear? Do we need special gear? You said we need a tripod. Now, I've had I had a guy. I do this thing called the Old Naples Photo Tour during our season, which is now the busy season is the winter for us, and I do the Old Naples Photo Tour every Monday. And one of the guys on the tour, he said, I heard your podcast and I listened to your advice about the tripod and it wasn't my advice. I just don't remember who said it. They said, you know, what most people do is they'll buy like $100 tripod and then they start using it and they think, well, this thing is just not good enough. It's, you know, it doesn't stay steady enough, whatever. So then they go and buy a $300 tripod and then they realize as they get more and more into things, it's not really good enough yet. And then they finally say, okay, I'm going to buy the $1,000 or up tripod. So you could save yourself $400 by just starting with the expensive tripod in the first place, right? But is that true for product photography? If you're inside, it's not moving. Do you need a really expensive tripod like you would if you were doing wildlife photography or landscape photography?
You probably asked a very interesting person to have that kind of question about what equipment is good enough. My philosophy on it really, like, if it holds the thing still, it could be a stack of books. That's my viewpoint on it.
Okay.
Like literally, it's like, well, if the tripod is so rickety that it's constantly flapping about, then yes, okay, good, spend more money and get it. But literally, if you're just starting out, I do not recommend you get something super expensive. Sure, if you're like, oh yeah, you know, I'm going to be like super pro, and it's just like, I know I'll probably have to upgrade. Well, sure, buy the thing now, save yourself the hassle. You won't have to buy it later. My philosophy is just, you know, if someone's just, you know, you want to try it out, you know, maybe you don't have much money, just get what tripod you can find. So long as the thing will stay still, then it's a tripod. And for product photography, you're inside. It's not like you got wind that's going to blow the thing over.
Yeah.
Just get something. Just get something to start with. And if it breaks, I'm sorry, you'll have to buy another one. But let's just get that sort of a thing.
What about a shutter release cable?
Oh yeah. Well, that would depend on your camera settings. I don't know how much we want to talk about camera settings here, but I got to try and keep this simple because there's lots of options. So if your listeners know shutter release, it basically means you don't have to touch the camera when you're taking the photo, and it minimizes any possible shake. Yeah, that's an option. You could totally go for that. I'm not against that at all. Usually I would just have a high enough shutter speed so that when my finger presses it, it wouldn't register any movement from myself. I personally have never used a shutter release actually, but it's not to say that someone else can't. Absolutely go for it.
I actually have strong feelings about shutter release cables, and not that you should or shouldn't use it, just what kind you should buy.
Yeah,
Because,
you'd be the expert on this. I'm not sure actually.
well, and it's not that I'm an expert, it's just that I've been teaching photography for a really long time and done a lot of photo tours. So when we're out doing a photo tour and everybody brings out their little wireless remotes, we spend most of the time trying to get those stupid things to work.
Really?
I say
Okay.
buy the $10 corded. It just plugs in.
Oh yeah, if we're talking between wired and corded, I'd go for cord anytime, because yeah, it's batteries to worry about, the signal, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So that's my strong feeling. But yeah, but I mean, you can use your timer if you.
Oh
If
yeah, you can use that. That's. Thank you for reminding me. Yes. If I do not want to touch the thing at all, I just use the self timer on the thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what about lenses?
Lenses. Okay, good. So lenses completely depend on the type of product that you're shooting. But say we're shooting shoes. To be safe, I would say that you should get, if you got the money, I would always recommend 100mm macro lens.
Okay.
I say a macro lens because you might want to get closer, you might want to get further away, and normal lenses, they have a limit to how close you can focus. All right. That would be like the luxury choice. But if you don't have that, then I just use your 50mm. Use your 50mm. If it's for a shoe, the 50mm 1.8 standard thingy, or even just the kit lens, the 18 to 55mm, something like that. Zoom that thing all the way in. I'm talking beginner's level here.
Now, why would you zoom it all the way in?
Well, if it's an 1855, then I would zoom it in so it's 55 zoom. Basically, that's to reduce any distortion in the product. Because if you're wide open, it makes, so if you zoom all the way out, then obviously you'll have to move the camera in closer to fill the shot with your product. And with a wide angle lens, it creates this distortion, fisheye thing, and then things closer to the camera look more pronounced and that sort of a thing. So 50, like anything for me, anything in the range between 50mm and 100mm, you could even do 85mm. That gives a good sense of just, it's flat. The image is flat. Okay. You're not getting distortions. That's my idea. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we've got our tripod, we've got our lens. We're ready to shoot. What do we do now?
now we're talking about the most important part, which is the lighting. Okay. Now, okay. So again, my view on this is a lot of people would just say, hey, what lighting will we use? Well, let's just turn on the light in the room. Let's just bring the product near the window. Let's just use some natural light. Honestly, okay, that's fine for a bit of practice, but if you're serious about it, I would not count on any of that. The reason is the lighting in your house, it's strangely colored. It's usually more yellowy. If you have down lights, they're just horrible sort of things. If you're near the window, natural light coming through a window, that can be nice. But the thing is that the natural light of the sun changes all through the day.
That's what's happening to me right now. I noticed the sun went behind a cloud and it got dark on my face.
Exactly, the same thing. It's what I was saying before. You want to be able to control light. And if you're relying on the sunshine, even though it can be beautiful for some shots, especially if we're talking sunsets, sunrises, can't beat that. But it's just like, it's always changing. And the thing is, especially in the notes, I mentioned something about continuity. I'm just saying, if you're taking a series of shots of 100 shoes and you want them to look the same and look beautiful and similar on a website, you've got to have the exact same brightness, the exact same lighting the entire time. And if the sunshine's changing, or a light bulb goes out in the house or whatever, it's not going to keep the sameness across the whole series of photos. If you're doing a one-off practice, sure, that's fine, just do it. But my thing is here, you need to have some dedicated lights, some specific lights that you buy or you have, which is going to light specifically this. And any other light, this is important, any other light, you need to try and just remove it. You need to remove it. You need to go into your basement. You need to wait until it's nighttime. You need to turn out all the other lights and just use the lights that are going to be on your product.
And you're doing that for color temperature, I'm assuming?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's what I'm about to say.
Oh.
So basically, then the next thing to consider is the color of your lights, the color temperature, because lights have different temperatures. Some can look more cool or cold or blue. Others look more warm. Blah blah blah. Like the light of a candle is different to the light of an LED bulb thingamajig. Anyway, so you want to get a light which is pure white, ideally, because you have a white background. You want the light that goes onto your background to be the same color, right? So basically, fluorescent bulbs and LED lights, as long as you read the packaging and it says a white LED light,
yeah,
that's the bulb that you want to use, because it will be white. It will be correct color white. Because if you go to the trouble of having a white background, but then you're shining a yellow light onto the white background, it'll make it yellow, and it'll make your product yellow. And the important thing about product photography is you want to show it as best as it can, as in the best light, so to speak, as you can, and you want it to show it as accurately as you can. Because if the shoe's white, but you photographed it with a yellow lamp, it will look like a yellow shoe, and then someone's like, why did you sell me a white shoe? I asked for yellow, like the picture said. Something like this. That sort of a thing. Okay, so the color of your lights are important.
Okay.
Okay, good. Now, moving on from this, you can, depending on what your budget is, you could start off with literally getting your household lamp, providing you replace the light in it with a white colored light, and you can put that and you can use that as one light on your product. But ideally, what you should do is, if you go onto the internet and just search a soft box lighting kit, and you will see these kits that have these gigantic white bulbs and these white box things that come with stands, and they're super cheap. They're super cheap. For starters, just get a cheap one so you can actually understand how it works. Because the thing that I want to stress about light is there's two types of light, okay? Literally, if you just got what's called the bare light bulb, a bare bulb, if you just got your lamp, which just has the light, and you just turn that light on in front of your product, what's going to happen? It's going to be what's called quite hard light, harsh light, quote unquote, because it's literally like you shined a torch at it. Like, you're going to light up one side of the product quite nicely, but then you're going to get these huge black dark shadows coming off it, and it's like that's not what is appealing when you want to photograph a product. Usually you see it in a lovely soft light, blah blah blah, but it's like, how do you create that soft light? That's the point of what these soft boxes that you can just buy. I've also got a tutorial video where you can make your own, but simply you just go and buy one.
Can I tell you a story about that?
Yes.
When we first started doing the Understand Photography show, it was a live video show on Facebook Live, because Facebook Live had just come out, so we thought we would try to take advantage of it. So Joe bought a light kit, like you're talking, it was $100 for 3 lights, and somebody dropped them and broke a bunch of the light bulbs. Well, it turned out it was cheaper to buy another light kit of 3 more lights than to replace the light bulbs. It was crazy. And this time we bought, I think, 3 lights for $80. It was just, they're so inexpensive now.
I know. It's like, Everyone should have one. It's cheap. It's just like, why wouldn't you? It's going to improve the quality a lot.
Now, let me just tell you though, the
Sorry, go on.
soft boxes are made out of some material that just disintegrates over time, so, and not very much time, like maybe a year. So anyway, go ahead.
I recommend them to start with, but literally, if you're going to do a lot of it, you definitely, you buy something better quality for the long run.
Well, the light quality was fine. It was just the soft boxes that were crazy, you
The
know?
materials and no good for the long run. Yeah, no, I get you.
All right, so
Yeah,
I got this light kit. Now what do
good,
I?
good. So basically, then literally, okay, good. So you got your camera, your tripod, you set it up, you got the background, you got the product on there, you've got it at an angle that you like, you've lined it up in the camera. Now, where do you position your lights? Literally, okay, a general rule would basically be you place your light, you just start with one light, and you place that light 45 degrees off to the left or the right of your camera. So the product's in front of you. So 45 degrees around to the left or the right is where you can place one of your lights. And you see what that looks like, okay? You see what that looks like on the product. Now, you'll probably see that one side of it looks lovely, and then you get a bit of shadow on the other side. So you can then grab another light and place that on the opposite side, like opposite, I don't know. It's like every product is different. It's like people. It's like, and because it's photography and it's an art form, you play with it to make each individual product or person look their best. So there is not necessarily a hardbound rule on where you should always place your lights. Generally, the 45-degree angle rule that works good for most things. Sometimes you'll find it don't work, especially if you're asking about shiny objects and this sort of a thing, which we can get to. But for standard stuff, say we're shooting a shoe, good, 45 degrees. And then you can place another light on the complete opposite side to reduce or remove the shadows that are cast from the first side, because it's like, good. So yeah, it's like light hits one side, it naturally causes a shadow on the opposite side of the object. So if you put another light complete opposite to that, shine it back, so it's like 45 degrees reverse. That is a standard setup that would work for most people. You can try literally 90 degrees side, like each side. You could try, there's 360 degrees of options. So you can put it above, you can put it below, you should play around with it yourself until you see
Yeah.
what looks best.
And sometimes you can't see it with your eye until you train your eyes. So you take the picture and maybe you can see it once it's a picture.
I know. Sometimes
it's funny, you know, something you said that I just wanted to, anybody who's watching the YouTube behind the scene video, Luke was talking about lighting is different for different people and different products. And if you just look at the lighting on us, he's 30 and I'm more than 30. And so I use flat lighting because I don't want to amplify any wrinkles, where he has this nice dark shadows on his chiseled chin. And
I actually set up a light. I set up a light for this. It's like 45 degrees off angle because I like the shadows it creates on my face.
You look awesome, but I would never have that kind of lighting up for somebody my age.
But everyone's different, so we just like see what works sort of best. Yeah, but I understand. Yeah, it's totally like that.
The same with products. Everything's different. Sometimes you're going to want to have some of the texture showing and you'll have darker shadows. And sometimes you're going to want more flat lighting, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so what else where were we?
Yeah.
Oh, what about
the background? The background. Yeah, we'll get to that. I just thought of something else. Like we're talking about light, like literally, like if it's about light, okay, everybody. If you got one thing from this, it's about the light, and you can make things. See, the thing is, okay, I guess in the field of product photography, maybe the lighting style is pretty ordinary compared to other things. Like you see some portraiture or whatever, and it can be quite dramatic, and they use these harsh lights and they use colors and blah blah blah. But you can take once you've had enough practice with light and you've kind of got a rough idea of, if I place it there, it's going to create this effect or this shadow, blah blah blah. You can then take different styles of photos of the exact same object. You can take a standard like shot which we're talking about building up right here on a white background of this shoe, you could then take that same shoe, put it in an environment, light it completely differently, make it look more dramatic, and then it's like, well, here's an ad campaign for the scary shoe or something like this. It's not like a white, it's not like, you know? So like lighting, you can give different ideas or messages through your lighting.
That's good stuff.
Make
Yeah.
that point.
No, I like it. That's good stuff. All right, keep going. So we're still on the white background.
So the white background, good. All right, good. So you got your light.
What about my shadows on the background? Aren't they going to look weird?
Okay, good. So with product photography, you've got a choice. You've got a choice. When you see those images on eBay, Amazon, you will notice how perfect and pure that white background is. Like, it is perfect. It matches the white web page behind the picture, right? Now, honestly, that is, in my experience, that is impossible to create without some photo editing, which is what we can go into next. But because basically, like, that is, you're talking about pure whiteness. Now, even though you've got a pure white board or piece of paper, it's like, and you've lit your object and you've reduced shadows as much as you can. Okay, good. So there might be a little shadow underneath, or a little blur underneath the thing. And it's like, well, I can't exactly get rid of that. Or you take the shot and you put it into your computer, and then you compare that photo to a pure white web page, and yeah, you can see the background is white, but it's slightly more gray than pure white. Mm-hmm. The way you get pure white, and this is how everyone does it, you've got to literally learn. There's a simple technique you can learn in Photoshop where you cut out your image. You cut out your image from the background. Now, if you're a lazy person, you could literally not use a white background to begin with and just put it on a desk, a wooden desk, photograph it, because like, oh, well, I'm just going to cut it out anyway and put it on a white background. But the point of shooting it on white is also because when your lights hit the background, it will reflect some of the color of that background onto your object. Mm-hmm. So if you photographed it on a red table and then just think, oh, I'm just going to cut it out, put it on a white background later, well, that's going to be a problem because the table itself will reflect a red tinge onto the object. I don't know if that's unnecessary information, but it is important.
No, that's really good stuff, but you just made me think of something else. What about white balance?
Yeah, white balance. So for those who know about white balance, it's like, okay, good. So if you've got a correctly white background, you've got a correct colored globe or lamp that's if that's all correct and that's correct color white, then the only way you can go wrong is if your camera settings, the white balance in your camera is to the wrong setting. And if we talk about settings for a second, I highly recommend use manual mode. Use manual mode. Learn manual mode, because if you're taking a series of photos, you need every photo lighting, style, brightness to look the same. And if you're using automatic mode, then even if you've got if a hand goes in front of the shot for a second, the camera will say, oh, well, I think I need to make this a bit darker now because there's a hand in it. Mm-hmm. So with your camera settings, you need to find the camera setting that looks good, and then keep that camera setting. And in terms of white balance, there is, what is it? There's a white balance setting for fluorescent lights. There's a white balance setting for tungsten lights. There's a white balance setting for flash. If you choose to use a flash, yeah, then there's a white balance setting which will give you the correct color white for that. But as a backup, for people who know the difference between shooting JPEG files and RAW files on the camera, I would recommend you shoot a RAW, because that means that in your computer later, you can correct if it was slightly the wrong color, you can easily correct it, even after you've taken the shot. So that's a bit of a backup. So a JPEG is sort of like the standard photo file, whereas a RAW file gives you all this extra information, which makes it a big file size. But then programs like Photoshop can read that information, and you can actually make more changes to your images after you've taken the shot, and possibly save a shot that would otherwise be ruined.
Okay, so For me, I recommend that people learn either Kelvin, if they have that on their camera, like a Canon Rebel will not have that, but a more
Yes,
professional camera will
that's
have a
right.
Kelvin setting, or
That's
do
right.
a
So
custom white balance, which I think almost all cameras do, because, and for me, I'm not big into product photography, but I do a lot of on-site printing where I'll do events and I have to print the pictures. It goes right from the camera to the printer.
yeah,
And I have to have the same color. I have to have the same light, the same colors, the same everything. And so I'm like, every single thing has to be a manual, and so does my backup camera. Everything has to be exactly the same.
that's right.
So it's just easier if you shoot it correctly in the first place.
Exactly.
And
That's right.
for back in the day, of course you're just 30. I'm more than twice your age. So back in the day when we did product photography with a white background, first of all, there was no Amazon, because Amazon requires that background to be white, white, white. 255, 255, 255 is the formula it has to be with Amazon. So we didn't have that. But to get a white, white background, we would use reflectors and lights behind the subject, and we would just super overexpose the background so that
That's
it was
right.
white, because it
The
was
other way.
completely overexposed, just big reflectors. So that was the key.
Yeah.
But now you can
No.
Photoshop and all that other stuff, and I think that's what most people do now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know what you're saying. And if you're photographing a person and you say you've got the background quite a distance from them, then yes, you can just shoot that background with so much light that it will go pure white. The problem with products, and certainly if you can see the actual white surface that the product is on, you can't shoot that surface with so much light without blowing out the product itself as well, which is
Right.
why, to keep the correct brightness of the product while getting a perfect white background, the only solution I've ever worked with is cutting it out later on.
And
And
I think that's what everybody does. I
yeah,
think that's the norm nowadays. So, it just wasn't an option.
oh, I know, I understand that.
But we also didn't have to have it perfect.
Yeah,
Where Amazon
yeah,
requires that it's, that perfect white. If you want to put anything on Amazon, it's got to be that color. I don't think eBay has the same rules, but Amazon does.
yeah. No, that's correct. Yeah, I understand.
So, all right. So we talked a lot about color temperature, which is really good. So white balance, reflective, like anything that you put that product on, it is going to reflect that light. I felt like such an idiot. So I have a mentor, which, she's long retired. She's much older than I am. But I bought my studio in 2006, and it's a little tiny space, but it's in a great location. And it had a big garage door, which I didn't want to. I wanted to cover it, so I put wall cloth over it. And I found this at the time it was $5 a yard fabric, and I found this wall cloth, and it was this, I don't know, this tinted color, kind of a reddish. It was really pretty. And I'm sending her pictures on my phone, and she's like, "Are you crazy? You can't put color in a photography studio." I was like, no kidding. Because it would reflect on everything.
I know, you learn these things. The more photos you take, like, you just learn, oh my goodness, that, like, it took me so many years to be able to look at a person or an object and realize that oh my God, there is a light source all the way over here which is giving them a slightly green face right now, or there is something like this. And it's like it opens your eyes to how much light affects it. And then, but when you can really see these things, it's like, then you learn, oh yes, now we can control that part better, and then you have more control of everything, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So getting back to where you're cutting the product out.
Yeah.
Now, you sent me some pictures,
Oh yes.
and there's still a shadow.
Yes, that's right. So okay. So if you take an image and you cut that thing out, I mean, this is frankly with the style that these things have these days. And every online store that I've ever worked for or done things for, it's like, you want the background to look white, but still you want the product to look like it actually is sitting on the ground. So literally you would cut it out, but if you just cut it out like that, it looks like the thing's floating. It doesn't have any dimension to it. It doesn't look so 3D. It sort of loses that effect to it. So literally in Photoshop, you would add a fake shadow, a photoshopped little blur of darkness underneath the product, if it's a product that's meant to be sitting on a surface. And it's simply a style thing that every online store like that I've ever been involved with uses, and frankly that's what I like. But it's like, if you cut, it's kind of like you cut out the background, so you've gotten rid of any chance of there being any part of that white background that is slightly gray or not pure white. But then it's like you got to add something back into it to make it look like that the product's real, it's tangible and that sort of a thing. And so you actually recreate a shadow after you've removed the shadow.
How do you create a shadow in Photoshop?
It's very difficult to explain in words. It's much easier if we're doing like, there's YouTube tutorials on it, but you literally just create a shape, like a black shape. You blur that shape, you then distort and position it under points of the object, and morph. There's tutorials all over the place. I've made a tutorial.
Do you have a tutorial on that?
I do have a tutorial, and it's on my YouTube channel thing. But
I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Sure. It's kind of like, you don't have to really if you didn't want to. I mean, also it depends what you're shooting. Like, I've shot these ghosts. There's a sample I think I gave you where it's called a ghost mannequin, where it looks like a ghost is wearing the clothing.
Oh
it's
yeah,
like you can't see the person. Yeah, and that's got no shadow because that's meant to be just standing up in pure white space, and so you wouldn't put a shadow like that. Doesn't seem to fit. Whereas the ring, it's kind of like you want to put that down. If I took that shadow away, you could look at it and it's just like, yeah, it's a nice ring. It's just, I like it. I like the shadow. My clients like the shadow. I've seen other pictures of things. It's a bit sexy. I don't know. It's like, call it what you will. It's, you don't have to have the shadow. It's just something that's just an agreed upon style.
I think you need the shadow. I really do, because it does, otherwise you're looking at the picture thinking something's wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
And you don't want to draw attention.
If something's on the ground, you expect it to have something there.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that's why.
All right, so we talked about color, temperature. We talked about lighting, that you're going to start with one main light. How do you turn the lights up and down?
That would completely depend on the type of lights that you buy. Some of them are dimmable, some of them are not. If the light is not dimmable, then the other ways you can do that, you could artificially dim it with, well, you can move the light further away, or you can add more
diffusion.
Yeah, if people know that word, diffusion material in front of it, which would soften the light further so that less light is coming through the soft box, something like that. And then again, the style that you want your product, like how you want it to look, you would just decide, well, do I want more light coming from the left than the right? Do I like to see a bit more shadow on the thing? Do I want it to just have no shadow? It's an artistic choice. And really, it's like if you're shooting these products for yourself, it's like, well, you decide what you like. You take a reference. That's what I've always done. If I wanted to learn something, I would take a reference. I would say, yes, I really like that shot. Now let's figure out how the heck they did that. And let's practice and play around, blah, blah, blah. And that's what you should do. If you're working for a client, you would find out what they want, what final result they're looking for, and then that's the style that you would stick to, this sort of thing.
Okay, so let's talk about, let's make it harder now. So what if the shoe is white?
Oh, the shoe is white? Well, that's fine. So basically, it's not really a problem because you're cutting out your image. I'd say it's annoying because if you're putting white lights onto a white background, it's going to light up the background, it's going to light up the shoe. They're both going to be quite bright. You may lose the white shoe and the white background together. You may find it difficult to make out the shoe against the white. A way that you can get around that, yeah, actually, this is what you do. You would actually you would actually underexpose the shoe a little bit. So it's not pure white. It's not like perfect white. It would be slightly gray in comparison to the background. You don't want it to go too dark, because otherwise it'll look like a gray shoe and not a white shoe. But if you're going for the pure white background look, you cannot, that to have some contrast, to be able to have some definition and see that, oh, there's actually a white shoe. There's actually a shoe there. It's not all white. You have to have a slightly darkened, even just a tiny bit, just so you can make out the edges. Another way you could do that is by having a light which is behind the object and shining back as sort of in portraiture, it's kind of like a rim light, or a backlight, and it would sort of give a sort of an outline edge to the shoe, which would separate it more from the background. That sort of a thing. You would try little tricks like this, but ultimately it's like, white shoe, white background. If they were both the same brightness, you couldn't tell them apart very, very. So you have to artificially make the shoe slightly darker. Or if it's like, well, the style of the web pages, that there's quite a few companies that have gray backgrounds behind all their products. Well, there you go. That solves it too. But either way, one of them has to be slightly darker than the other one. Otherwise, you won't be able to make them out. Or, sorry.
It's okay, you're on a roll.
Sorry. Or if it's like, okay, let's just say you were lucky enough to have a shoe which had a black or some kind of darker rim outline to it anyway, then you're lucky. Or if it's like a white watch, but then the watch has a black rim around the edges, then that's fine. You can make the face of that watch lovely and white, and it doesn't matter, because at least there's something separating it, so you can make it out against the white background. Yeah.
So if you were doing black on black, it would be the same thing with the lighting, where you would just shoot a light from behind it to give it some separation.
That is one thing. That is one thing. But really, just the only thing to keep in mind is just, even if they're the same color, even if the background is the same color as the product, you just need to change something enough. Just give it enough difference in tonality, in the brightness or something like that, so that you can see there is something in front of that and it's not completely camouflaged into the background. That's really all you need to do. There are many, there's lighting tricks and these sorts of things that you can play with, and maybe that works too. But essentially, that's just what you're trying to create. You just want it to not get lost in the background.
Yeah. Actually, I think black on black would be even harder than white on white, because black doesn't have as many color tones to it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Because you don't want to like a grayish black, so you would have to light that. I mean, I can't
you'd have
think
to
of
do
any other
something
way.
with light. You'd have to, that's right. Or and if we talk about shiny objects for a second, oh my goodness, because okay, so because basically, all right, say you were shooting a black shoe on a black background. Well, okay, good. You would literally have to play around with your light. And it's literally, when I say play around with your light, you're literally just playing with the angle, and possibly slightly brighter, slightly darker, but mostly with the angle, because the angle that light hits the object and then bounces back into the camera lens as to what we see can create, like if you put a light behind an object, and let's just say you got a suede leather shoe, that light is going to create shadows through the texture of that shoe, and you're going to see this detail in the shoe. Whereas if, say, you had the light as like an on-camera flash, which is literally going straight ahead, and lining up everything, you don't see that texture, because the shadows are casting in the other direction, which we're not seeing. So
it's getting rid of the shadow, and you need the shadow for the definition.
That's right, that sort of thing, yeah. And then if we talk about, let's just say, okay, good. So you're shooting a shoe, and it's a normal shoe. It's like it's a matte texture, as in it's not reflective. It could be leather, it could be plastic, something like this. Now let's just say that, okay, you want to shoot something that's shiny. Let's say you want to, oh my goodness. Okay, so just for the record, the most pain I've ever experienced is trying to photograph jewelry. That was when I was still learning, because the way, no kidding, I literally stayed up until 7 a.m. the next morning trying to figure out how to light. This was many years ago, okay? I'm much better now. But I'm just saying, this is some of the adventures you can have when you're trying to learn things. Exactly. But okay. But the secret with shiny objects compared to objects which are not shiny is literally, this is how you think of it. You think, okay, let's just shoot like a ring or something, for instance. Let's just shoot a gold ring. Okay, and it's metallic. Now, all you've got to think about is the fact that when you're looking at that ring, at that metal, you're looking into a mirror. You're looking into a mirror, and what does a mirror do? It reflects. Okay, good. And depending the angle that you're looking at that mirror, it might reflect what you're seeing off into another direction. This sort of a thing. And literally, this is the way I think about it. Like, I photograph a piece of jewelry, and I look at the different sides of it, and I see what I can see reflected in the different parts of it, and I just say, okay, good. So what that mirror is seeing right now is actually, oh, it's seeing off to the left of the room right now. Okay, good. So that's where I need to put a light, or that's where I need to put a white reflector if I want it to reflect into the camera brightness. Or in jewelry, if you want to create definition in it, you would put a black, the opposite. You would put a black piece of material there, or card, so that you would get a black reflection. Because one thing, all right, if people, I'm sure you've seen these light boxes. You can buy a light box off eBay, Amazon, light box. It's just a box, it's a cube, and all sides are white. And for some products, matte products, they're great to photograph. You just put the product in there, you shoot your lights through the sides, it's got equal light all around. That does not actually work for jewelry. Like, if you want, like, I've tried it, I know. Because jewelry is meant to be shiny, and if you shine whiteness against from all directions in that mirror, what is it going to look like? It's going to look like it's white. It's going to look like it's white. And when I first figured this out, the client said to me, "But the ring's meant to be gold. Why is it white?" And then I thought, "Oh, geez, it's because I photographed it from all sides with white, because I thought that was what it was gonna, that was the way to do it." And then at that point, I started to realize, well, it's because, again, going back to the definition of photography, it's about light, but also shadow. So when you're thinking shiny objects, you want to see what parts of it you want to be lit, but also what parts of it you don't want to be lit. So then because the way that something appears to our eyes like it's shiny is literally because it's not only reflecting brightness, it's reflecting darkness too. And a matte object will not reflect such contrast between black and white as a super shiny object would. So I hope I'm not saying too much, but it's quite fascinating. It's a very interesting subject.
So what am I doing if I have this ring? How am I photographing it? I'm confused.
Okay, so basically sure. So all right, let's just say you have a wet ring, you have your white background. Let's just start with one light. What you'll want to do is first, you just with a single light, let's say you've got a softbox, that would be lovely. And you would literally just move this softbox around in, 180 degrees of directions. And you would see, okay, good. So now what angle first will this light make that look most appealing?
Uh-huh.
I judge it by the Luke Ayres cool factor, the cool factor. Like, I place my lights where the thing looks coolest. Okay. Now, and then you find that first thing, and it's like, okay, good. It's not perfect, but hey, this light looks good. Now let's just set that light there. Let's get another light. And now let's just see if I place this other light, and maybe you don't use two lights. Actually, more often than not, I just use one light, and then I would use a reflector, which essentially, if it's placed right, it's like another light, but it's just less strong. And then you would get your reflector, and you would just test it. You would see, let's just say my light is coming 45 degrees from the left. Now I would get my reflector on the right side, and I would just see, okay, good. What angle on the right side, does this do anything to it? Does it, if I'm bouncing back some light from the other side, does it do anything? Does it? Yes, no. If it looks good, if it adds something to it, I have the idea in my mind. What do I want this jewelry to look like? I want it to look like sparkly and gorgeous. So if it doesn't make it look more sparkly, I'm not going to use it. That's my gauge of testing how cool it looks, yeah?
And can you see that through the camera lens, or do you have to wait until you look at the picture?
Well, usually I would take, test shots as I go. Now, let's take a test shot with one light. Okay, good, looks fine. Now let's try and do something about the other side of it, which is not so lit up. So I'd add a reflector or something. And actually, when probably if you're using flashes, which is what I use all the time these days because they're more powerful and you can adjust the power setting as compared to what's called a constant light, which is a light which is constantly on. You can then get like a small, sharp flash of light coming from behind it, and it will hit the edges of it just like the rim light on a person, and it would just create these sparkles of glint off the thing. Yeah, that's right. It's once you start practicing, I fully it's probably a mash for me to just explain this all to you. But literally, if a person just got their background, got their camera, got their product, got one light, started playing with that, got another light, got a reflector, and just literally started moving them around, you would see for yourself quite fast the different ways that you can light these things. And it's literally just, that's all the practice is. You're just saying, oh, so when it's coming from that direction, it looks better, and when it's coming from this direction, it looks worse. Oh, good. That's a little piece of mental image library, that I can add to my professionalism. Now I know how to do that.
Yeah.
That sort of a thing. Yeah.
It's funny because that's how the main product photography I've done in the last 10 years have been setting up customers to do their own product photography.
Oh, yeah.
And so every product is different. So if this is something that you really want to pursue, you have to try many different things. So I'm going to give you a hard one.
Yeah.
So we're doing the black background, the black tennis shoe, but it's a shiny tennis shoe, and we don't want it to look too shiny.
You don't want it to look too shiny, but it is shiny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. You don't want it to look shiny, but it is.
I mean,
okay.
You want it to look a little shiny, but you don't want like big reflective, icky white spots on there, right?
Okay, fine. So if you didn't want something to look shiny, you would get.
I'm such a mean person, aren't I?
This is a good challenge. This is a good challenge. Thank you for the question. Okay, let me just think about this. So black tennis shoe. It's a shiny tennis shoe on a black background. How I would do it, and you don't want it to look too shiny.
Well, you don't want it to. You know what I'm talking about. You don't want glare. You want a little shimmer, but you don't want glare.
Okay. Again, it's like you would just place it on your black background. You would get one light. Now, in addition to the angles which you can shine your light from, there's another thing, yeah? It's literally like to do with the distance, because one of the things which is literally what results in soft light or harsh light is literally the size of your light source. That's actually scientifically what creates soft or harsh light, because literally if your light source is huge in comparison to the object, the light hitting that is going to wrap around it and it's going to appear soft. Whereas if that light was very far away, it would be in comparison quite small, and so it would be more of like a torchlight sort of a thing. So if you wanted to handle shininess, that's what I would do. I would literally just play with the angles, play with the distance, whether it was going to be harsh or soft, until I got a nice balance where it's a little bit shiny, but it's not too shiny.
Right. And diffusion. Diffusion helps too. You're talking about a bigger light, but the more diffusion, the soft.
Well, that's the point of a diffuser. A modifier is literally taking your light bulb, which can only be so big, or your flash, which can only be so big, and you're shooting it into a modifier, which modifies it and essentially creates a big light. That's basically all a modifier does. It modifies it.
I have a story about this. We set up a little photo area for a guitar store. Yeah. And boy, I really had a hard time because of the glare on the different, and they're all different.
Oh yeah. You were saying yes.
So I didn't stay up till 7 a.m, but I took several days to work. Thank God my son was still living in town, and he's a guitar player, so I had different guitars to practice on. But it was the diffusion. I had the big softbox, and I've got some pretty big. I have a lot of stuff. I've been around forever. I've been in business forever, right? But I kept putting more diffusion, more like. Some of it was just white cloth because I kept trying to get more and more on there, but I started with just the scrim. And if people don't know what a scrim is, it's basically a white cloth. And, but it's usually tight, so you don't have to worry about it. So, but it was probably about 5 layers of diffusion as well as that big light. And the closer your light is to your object, the bigger it is, basically. So it was hard.
What? So wait, did you get the result you wanted in the end?
I did, and I had the customer buy, those, are they called 4-in-1 or 3-in-1? Those 4x6 reflectors that you open them up and there's a scrim inside them.
Yes.
They had 4 scrims in front of they had just a fluorescent light, like you said, they just bought the light with the good light bulb. Yeah. And then those scrims, and it gave a really nice soft light, but boy, it took me a long time to figure that out. Shiny objects are really hard because of the glare. Unless if you want the shine, it's a different story than if you want to get rid of the glare, right? Yeah. And I should have known this because I've always been a portrait photographer. What do we do with portrait photographer? We want a bigger light. That's why we like window light so much. We like that big light because it's soft.
Right, that's right. I will tell you 2 other things. I will tell you 2 other very technical sort of pro things that the pros do. There are some situations you'll get into where it's like it could be just you're shooting a bunch of different shiny things and the angles are terrible and it's just a nightmare trying to do it. Then basically what I've seen happen plenty of times, and I've done it before, this is why Photoshop exists. You can take multiple shots, different angles of light, different styles, and then you merge them you combine them later, and then you can choose, okay, so on this surface, I don't want their reflection, but on this surface, I do want their reflection. And you've taken different multiples of exposures at different lighting styles, and you can then choose and make literally an impossible shot in the computer, but looks.
So you're stacking them in layers and then using masks. Okay, I did see that technique when I was looking to figure out the guitars, but because I was setting it up for a customer, they weren't going to do all that, right? I needed to be able to shoot it, and it was hard. All right, so let's wrap this up. So the thing that I got most out of this is lighting.
Yes, lighting, more lighting, please. Yes.
And as much as you can shoot in manual, at least shoot with your white balance in manual, right?
Yes, that's right.
In some type of manual setting, because the color has to be consistent.
That's right. I think you mentioned Kelvin, and I was just thinking, what's the correct Kelvin? If it's a white piece of material, it's like the correct Kelvin for white is like 5400, 5600, 5200. This sort of an area would be like the most correct. You might have to fine tune it, but yeah.
Yeah. So, so tell us about your online class, Luke Ayers.
Oh, okay. So about a year ago, I was thinking, and it was very timely because everything that's happened this year, I'm like, oh, geez, I'm glad I set up that course because it's like another channel of income sort of a thing. But I basically made a course because this is another reason why I think what you're doing is great, because like I said at the start, you're making things simple and you're teaching it in a simple way, because there are incredible photographers out there. But from my own observation, I couldn't see many that were amazing, but could also explain themselves in a way that someone who literally maybe drives a tractor for a living or something like this can like just say, oh, wow, now I can use my little point and shoot a bit better, this sort of a thing. And that was the main concept. I just wanted, I made a course, I made it super simple. I made sure also another thing that people get very hung up on when they're trying to learn a new subject is literally just the terminology. Like, what's aperture mean? What are these words? What is shutter speed? If you don't even understand what the word photography means, which is why I clarified at the start here, how will you possibly fully understand the subject if you don't understand these words and all this kind of thing? So I made my course very simple, like not stupid simple, like I don't want to be dulled to death by a lecturer.
So what
But
is the
it's like
course? Is it basic
so
photography or?
yeah, so it's basically me, because I'm self-taught. It's basically teaching everything that I've learnt in the simplest way, in a way that that everyone who's done the course so far, and I have many hundreds of people on the course already, and the feedback is fantastic. It's simple, it's understandable, and also it's fun.
What's
Like
the name?
if
What's the name of your course?
It's very simple. It's the photography course. and then the URL is the photography course, and it's on the platform Thinkific. So the photography course .thinkific.com.
Okay.
And that's the course, and there's a video, and it's very, like, I put my full personality into it. Some people like that, some people don't, but that's fine. It's if you think you'd like that course, then you're welcome to do it. But I just aim for simplicity, and I aim for everyone who does the course to fully understand it. And literally, they have an open communication with me. They can ask me any questions that I made the course so they don't have to ask questions. It's so simple. But if they do, they can always ask me. And I just want people to learn, and I enjoy teaching people, so I made the course.
Well, that's why I liked your video on YouTube about product photography, because you really simplified it. And that's, our motto at Understand Photography is we simplify the technical. So
Well
I
done.
really liked your teaching style.
I'm a big fan of yours too. That's fantastic.
Now, what's your website? How can people find you?
My professional website is my name, Luke Ayers, LukeAyers .work, WORK. That's my professional website, and on there you have everything else if you want to get in touch. Yes.
What happens if you go to lukeayers.com?
.com. Well, I tried to register that, but it wasn't available. Actually, the story behind it was originally lukeayers.com.au, because I was in Australia. In Australia, we use AU.
Right.
But then when I moved to Europe, I was like, well, I don't want my website to be Australian if I'm sort of moving around the place. So I changed the ending, and com wasn't available. So I'm like, well, what's the next best thing? Well, I do work very hard, so let's do work. Okay, fine.
All right, Luke Ayers, thank you so much for being a guest on the Understand Photography show.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, pleasure.
Thanks to Luke, and thank you to the audience for joining us on the Understand Photography show. Again, this is our last show. So thank you for the over 4 years of your fellowship. Please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. If you go to understandphotography.com, the very first thing you'll see on the website, it says click here for freebies. Click there, sign up for something. You can download, how to get tax sharp images every time. That's a real popular one. In exchange, we ask for your email address. You'll be put on our mailing list. I send out a newsletter about once a month, so not too much. And it's got photo tips in it, what's happening with Understand Photography. So please keep in touch. I'm Peggy Farron. Thanks for joining us on the Understand Photography show.
Get up!